I'm Jim Collison, and live from the Gallup campus here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Called to Coach, recorded on December 18th, 2015. Called to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of teams, individuals, and organizations around the world. If you do have questions during the live webcast, we do have a live chat room. It's available for you right below the main video window. If you want to log into that, oftentimes I know folks come and watch, but we want to have you interact with it. There's a login button, bottom left-hand corner. Select it. Select guest, and then put your name in the guest. Otherwise, you'll get like guest 1, 2, 3, 4, and we don't know who you are. And we'd love to call you out by name there if you have a question for us. So the best way to interact with the program is to join us live in the chat room. If you are listening to the recorded version or have questions about custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, you can contact us. Send us an email really for any question. Send us an email, coaching@gallup.com, or use the contact form right there on the live page. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center, just gallupstrengthscenter.com, for all your coaching resources and StrengthsFinder training needs. And you can now catch both video and downloadable and streaming audio for offline listening. Basically, there's no reason, no excuse you shouldn't be listening to these programs offline. All the links, including our mobile app, and everything to get your top 5 right there on your phone is available at the Coach's blog. Again, coaching.gallup.com. Heather Wright is our host today. She works as a senior learning and development consultant with Gallup right here, and I say that kind of weird because I'm actually home today, which is not too far from the riverfront. But Heather, welcome to another Call to Coach.
Thank you so much, Jim. I'm excited to be with you and Carol Ann today. It's you could tell from the moment I logged in, some of Carol Ann's themes just bubble right to the surface. So I'm excited to introduce everyone who hasn't had the pleasure of meeting Carol Ann McGuire yet. You're going to very quickly learn a lot about the many facets of who she is as a Gallup Strengths coach. I said we might need to schedule her for a second Call to Coach just so we have enough time to explore everything as to who Carol Ann is as a strengths coach, as a person, as an artist, as an educator, as a parent. So there's a multitude of threads that we can explore today, and we'll dive in and cover as much as we can here. I want to put your top 5 out there, Carol Ann, for everybody to hear. You lead with achiever, learner, focus, positivity, and woo. So, woohoo, welcome to Call to Coach. Glad to have you here. And I just always love to ask people how their coaching journey began. What was it, Carol Ann McGuire, that called you to coach? Curious to hear your story.
This is a great story. So, hi, everybody. I'm so glad to be here. So the story is this. My daughter and I were doing a conference in San Diego at a college. And we were showing some part of my nonprofit, and the next speaker up was going to talk about strengths. Well, we had no idea what that was, and clearly we had missed the email that gave us the code to take our assessment. So as soon as his presentation starts, everyone around us pops up a little tent in front of their desk, and it has 5 words on it, and we kind of looked at each other and went, oh, okay, we had nothing. And as he went through his presentation, the people around in the room were like, "Oh my gosh, that's so you! Oh wow, how do you know?" And Macy and I are sitting and we're like, we're clearly missing a big something here. And so, of course, we went home and took it immediately and had that little aha moment between the two of us. And as soon as I had taken it, I was like, oh my gosh, everybody has to take this. I made my husband take it. I made my parents take it. If I had a friend around me that could take it, they were all, I was just fascinated by this idea of strengths. But at the time, I was working for Will Smith, and I was teaching in, Calabasas at a really great school with really great people, and didn't really have time to dive into strengths like I wanted to, but it just always was there. It was always fascinating to me. And when the school closed, I found myself going from 6 figures to 0 figures and had to say, oh my gosh, I have to reinvent myself at this time in my life, and this is insane. And I couldn't go back into education because I was overqualified. I had too many masters and too many years in education, so I would be at the top of the pay scale. So I really have to reinvent myself. And this topic of strengths just kept bubbling up to the top. And I talked to my husband about it. I was like, I really would like to go become a coach. I'm fascinated by this idea. And so we talked about it, and he, at the time, I did not know his strengths. At the time, I wanted to be a coach, and he was taking a really long time thinking about this. And I was like, you don't understand, like, I need to make a decision like yesterday would be nice. And so I had him take the test and then realize he has like all these heady thinking, strengths. And it made me think like couples should take this test, because the things, I used to think like, you're just making this decision just to tick me off. That's your sole purpose in life, is just to irritate me. And when I saw his strengths, I really could look at it and say, no, I can appreciate it. Like, you're actually really thinking about this. So we went in and I took the class, was fascinated by the class. Kurt was my master teacher, and I just couldn't suck up the information fast enough. And so I started doing what I do for my other things. I just started sketching my classes, because that's how I learn. So if a great idea came in, I just started sketching it, and I would put it online after the class, not really thinking anything about these sketches, because it's just kind of how I process my information. And I think, Jim, you were one of the first people that came and said, hey, maybe you should write a book.
Yeah, well, it came during Theme Thursday, right? You began to sketch our Theme Thursdays, and you sketched about 3 or 4 of them, and I went, hey, this is actually really good. We should do something with this. Well, let's hold that thought, because we want to talk about that work a little bit later.
Well, that's kind of how it started. So I became a coach. I started sketching these, themes as they came. And for me as a coach, it really helped me to understand each one, especially the ones that are at the bottom of my, list. But the more if I had to really sketch it and find a way to understand it, I felt like I could understand people with that better and appreciate them that are coming in with those strengths. So that's kind of how it all began.
How has it evolved into, how would you describe your career now? Tell me a little bit about, what have you morphed this into? There's that little entrepreneurial spirit in who you are. Help other people, because I think there's a lot of people that are on that same journey where they say, I've fallen in love with strengths. I got someone to agree to let me pay this money, and this is what I want to do. But talk a little bit about your journey in deciding, what's my company going to be? Who am I going to be? How am I going to use this coaching to make my living?
Yeah, well, I had already done quite a bit in education. I had done the whole conference circuit and had done a lot of keynoting in the education world. So it was a really natural follow-up for me when I went into strengths to keep on that conference circuit with strengths. And so that's kind of my happy place, is doing workshops and doing events is really where I enjoy it the most. And so it was a really easy thing for me to fall into that piece, because it was already who I was, and I already kind of had momentum going in that era, kind of that area. So that's kind of where my coaching has mostly taken me. I've done small group coaching, but probably my favorite is workshops. I just love collect, and maybe it's that teacher in me. Like, I love to see a class go, oh, like I like that aha moment that teachers get. And so I think that's probably where my joy comes from, is seeing that group collectively get that moment of, oh my gosh, this is really amazing.
Love it. So talk a little bit. People are always curious to hear. Well, first, let me just say I'm taking some notes here as you talk, and what I love is when I see, I always say it's the easiest to begin to understand strengths when you see them up walking around the room. And even though you might not be walking around at the moment, hearing you talk about your strengths, when you say, "Oh, I had too many masters," I go, "Oh, there's a learner for you." When you talk about that whole idea of reinventing yourself. It's that positivity, that energy, and obviously people see and hear that from kind of your passion and your energy. When you say you love doing those workshops and events, I think it's a beautiful blend of what positivity with learner can look like. So it's not just about the process of the learning, but creating a really energizing process of learning for people.
I love that. Yeah. It energizes me thinking about that. I don't even have to be doing it. I just have to be thinking. If there's an opportunity to be with a bunch of people that are learning, sign me up.
That is enticing. Very cool. So as you think about, one of the things I always want to hear from folks is, where's your coaching impact been? Tell me a story or two about someone that you've coached around their strengths and a discovery you've made, a discovery they've made. What's been kind of the outcome of some of the coaching you've done so far?
God, there's so many stories. So one of my favorites, though, I totally randomly was coaching a construction company. It was this big, huge, multi-million-dollar construction company. I know nothing about construction. And I was coaching the manager of this construction company, and he was having trouble with his men. He had a great team. They got along fantastically, but they were having trouble, kind of communicating everything out. And so we took a look at their, strengths as a team. And he has achiever in his top 5, and his main man had responsibility. And I told him, I said, what you're doing as an achiever is you're writing him lists, but that's really not his thing. If you just tell him or, talk to him about what his responsibility, he'll take it. And his manager with responsibility was just telling the boss what he was going to do. I was like, that's not going to work. You have to send him a list. Like, talk to him. Do exactly what you're doing right now. Just talk to them so they can hear it. And oh my gosh, their productivity went. It was such a minor, it was such a little thing, but it was just a way to help people talk to each other so they could hear each other. They're saying exactly the same thing, but just speak in the language of the person that's listening.
Yeah.
And it was a little tweak, but made huge impacts.
I think about slight shifts like that, and just even the idea that strengths becomes a new vocabulary that we all have in common. So you may be speaking English, I may be speaking Spanish, someone else may be speaking French, but when we speak strengths, we begin to speak that same language. And then, like you pointed out, that awareness, that aha of, oh, what's my achiever do, or what does someone else have, and how does that affect what they need? That translation. So you become that master translator for them.
It was such an awesome experience, because it was for me, it was just a minor little tweak, but for them, it was just such a big difference in how they work together.
Very nice.
Love that.
Yeah. Any other examples or stories, people that you feel like your strengths have had impact with?
I do a lot of conferences. So my favorite conference is with teachers. Obviously, that's my heart. And I was working with a group of teachers, and one of the teachers had a little boy, shocker, that won't be quiet in class. I know that it's going to be a shocker for everyone, because I'm sure in Omaha you don't have kids that talk a lot in class, but in California we have a few. So this little boy was just
ones that have communication in their top 5, right? That's right. The raw communication.
Right, just would not be quiet. So we built a stage in her classroom. We just took like a piece of plywood, painted it black, put it on the floor, and then got some Home Depot spotlights and put a red curtain behind and had spotlights. And I told her, I said, this little boy is going to talk in class. It's going to happen. So how many minutes do you think a day you spend working with him in stopping him to be, trying to quiet him down so you can teach. She's like, oh my gosh, all day long. And he's just like, I don't want, constantly talking. I said, okay, let's do this. Let's give him a stage. Let's give him a place to speak. And he can have 5 minutes of whatever he wants to talk about, and everybody's going to listen. And she thought I was kind of crazy at first, because 5 minutes is a long time, but I said, you're wasting way more than 5 minutes by telling him to be quiet. So as soon as he saw like this stage being built and there's spotlights and a red curtain and it was a big deal, he would be quiet. He would try and hold it back because he knew when it was his moment, the lights were going to come on and he was going to stand on the stage, and he had a full 5 minutes. And it was a little thing, but for that teacher, the time that she saved in class of telling him stop, 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 and giving him a moment switched the whole thing around, because he was able then to have his moment on stage, which was cute. It was so cheap. It was such a cheap little curtains, but it made, I love moments like that in the classroom where you can, because our kids have these strengths, and it makes no sense that we squash them. Mm-hmm. We need to build them up, because you don't know who this little boy's going to end up being.
That's exactly right. So speaking of kids, education's a passion. Talk a little bit about how have you woven strengths into parenting or coaching people around parenting?
One of my favorites. So I love the whole idea of strengths. I'm a parent myself, so I have a 21-year-old and an almost 18-year-old, and we've been through a lot of years of parenting. So I have a couple of tricks in my belt, and sometimes I did parenting by accident. Right? You do something great and it's totally by accident. But now you don't know. Now that I know where my kids' strengths are, I can target them. Mm-hmm. So this is my new. Should I show you my new thing for this new year that I'm doing with my kids, with my parents? Yeah. So I've made dog tags. So I don't know if you could see these.
Oh yeah.
So on my dog tags, I have one with my strengths, my husband, and my 2 girls. And my goal this year is I have a jar for each one, and as I see them manifest their strengths through the year, I'm just leaving a little note in their jar. And next Christmas, I want to gift them with all of the times that I have seen them work in their strengths.
Wow.
But I don't always remember what my kids' strengths are. So I wear them on my neck. And I remind myself, when they jingle, I kind of take a look down, and it has been great for me as a mom, because I can notice when my kids are really working in what God gifted them to be. Mm-hmm. And I can celebrate that with them. And I want to celebrate that with them, because I want them to really have that language as they're growing, and as they meet their mates, or as they go to college. I want them to understand who they are. I don't ever want them to doubt who they are. And so as a parent, I think it's crucial. Like we're given this gift to know where our kids can develop. Why wouldn't you want to learn that? This is your child. So
that's
exciting.
Powerful. I love the gifting idea of, capturing it, bottling it all up, and leaving it there as a reminder that they can continue to draw back out and go, oh, yeah, I remember when I did that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because that helps them, when we talk about name it, claim it, aim it, I think the hardest part sometimes for people is to aim it, because our talent is so much a part of who we are sometimes. We forget that it's unique or special or different. So when you call it out and you write it down for me, and then I can think about, oh yeah, I should do more of that, or I should do that again, or I haven't done that in a while. It gives people intentionality about the intense talent that they bring.
I'm trying to imagine, like, next year for Christmas, if somebody really looked at my life, and noticed when they saw positivity or focus and wrote it down. I want to give that gift to my kids. I want them to know, I see you. I see you. I notice what you're doing. I want to celebrate who you are, and I want to gift you for all the times that I've seen these strengths.
Very good.
There's a little bit, Heather, I'm sorry, let me jump in real quick. There's a little bit of bucket experience in that, right? You know, with how full is your bucket, this idea of, I mean, I love the idea of being cued, because I too would forget, you know, I have trouble remembering what my kids' top 5 are. And so to have those on hand, so to speak, literally, to go,
literally,
okay, what am I seeing here?
Right.
Caroline, you're making these tags, these strengths tags, we'll call them. You're making them available. If folks wanted to get, be able to get them, how would they do that?
They just go to my website, rockyourstrengths.com, and then if you do /store, it will bring you right to the store. And I think till the end of the month, we're doing a buy one get one. Cool. On the tags.
Oh, very cool.
For me, I'm doing these for me. Like, if somebody else thinks that they could use them, fantastic. But I want this to be, like, I want to create gifts that I use, that are meaningful to me. And so,
well, and Caroline, I think about too, as you go along, and as you're capturing these glimpses of talent, are you reinforcing them in the moment? Are you having a conversation about it with each of your daughters every time, and then capturing it and putting it in the jar too? Because I think that, you know, there's something about being told in the moment, but there's something really valuable too in the writing it down. You know, and speaking of the bucket book experience, Jim, I had a dad kind of took that tactic. He created he used kind of a file folder that he shaped into a bucket that he put on each child's bedroom door. And the idea was, he said, every week I want to write them at least one drop to fill their bucket so that they know what I love about them. You know, same thing, just to reinforce why they're a great kid, the things they've done right, the things I appreciate and value about them. His wasn't necessarily strengths-based, but this was years ago before StrengthsFinder had really taken off. And it was that idea that if I can just give them a little bit of that positive reinforcement, that positive feedback, that helps shape them. And so I love the strengths aspect of it, because not only are you filling my bucket saying, hey, you know, gosh, Macy, you did something right today. You did something really well. That's filling my bucket and giving me confidence and clarity about what I'm good at. But it also then, with the written aspect, has that lasting impression. And what this father said to me about his filling his children's buckets was that, you know, when my child's having a bad day, or when someone's picking on her in middle school, or when she's making that decision with friends of should we break a rule or not, it's like I want her to have what a good kid she is, why she's, you know, why she's great, why I love her, and that might just be the confidence, the security that she needs to say, you know, please don't speak to me like that, or you guys, I don't think this is a good idea, I don't want to be a part of it. And when you know your strengths and when you know what you're good at, it commands that self-confidence and respect that maybe you wouldn't have as strong if you hadn't had that conversation or that positive reinforcement. So I love that. So rockyourstrengths.com.
You can't give your kids, you can't give your kids too much, you know, praise. Well, you know, there's my positivity, but it's not just praise. It's not just praise. It's meaningful, and I want them to know, I noticed you working in your strengths, because they're going to need that someday. You know, life, they're not going to always be under my wing. And what prompted this whole thing is we were looking through baby books, and you get to like about 5 years old, and then, you know, there's no more baby book. And my daughter was saying, well, you know, tell me another story, you know, tell me what else. I was like, oh God, I don't know if I remember it. It has to, you know, happen. And so I thought, kind of what happens, like we do kind of drop off the baby book and don't you know, keep those milestones anymore. And this is it's simple. It's not anything that I have to think about too hard. It happens in the moment, but I just want to be reminded of who my husband is, who he is, you know, what has God given me.
I think the clarity that you just spoke of is, you know, there's some people that your positivity comes out and says you can't give people too much praise, right? That's my positivity. But you clarified it, or you defined it even better, because I think some people would say, well, sure, you can build people up too much. You can tell them how fabulous they are and their head gets big. But what you said was it's attached to who they are and the beautiful things you see them doing with that talent. And I think that's where you're spot on. There can never be too much positive reinforcement about talent in action. And that's going to be what fills people up the most. You know, just to say, you're fabulous, you're wonderful, and stop there. That's not productive. Yeah. No, and that doesn't help anybody. But saying you're fabulous because I saw you do this, or you thought of that, or you impacted other people this way. That's where that praise, you can't have too much praise and feedback on your talent. I think I'm with you on that. Very good. Okay, so I want to get into this artistry piece because I think it fits with tips and tools and best practices you have about strengths. Talk to me a little bit about, you talked with your learner about sketching. Tell me a little bit about the process of how sketching something out helps you learn. I was having a conversation in our strengths coaching course last week or the week before. I'm losing track of time here. December 7th through 11th, we had an accelerated strengths coaching course here in Omaha. One of the participants is someone who works with the deaf community and does a lot of sign language. And even though both her children are hearing children, she said she always communicates with them both verbally and with sign language. And I thought it was really fascinating because what she explained to me was when you say something and you follow it up with the sign language, which uses a different part of your brain, it intensifies the mind's ability to take that on. If both parts of your brain or multiple parts of your brain are working to learn something, it solidifies the learning a little bit better. And I wondered, was that a conscious, intentional aspect of your saying I'm sketching, or is that something that just came about?
In the beginning, no, I had no idea. I used to get in trouble all the time in school for doodling on my papers. I mean, I remember even in college doodling on my papers and the professors saying, you know, don't doodle. But for me, the doodle was connected to what I was learning. So if they were, I don't know, if they were talking about something, I would, you know, make the 1, 2s, and 3s all fancy, or I don't know, whatever I did, I would doodle on my paper. But it would trigger some kind of memory for me. And so for me, it was helpful, but I used to get in trouble for it all the time. And now I get paid to do what I used to get in trouble for, which kind of makes no sense. But
beautiful transformation, isn't it?
It is beautiful for me. And now I look back, you know, now that I've been sketching and I didn't even start really sketching purposefully until the last 3 years or so. But I got challenged by a group of kids in New Zealand to start, you know, creating art. And I thought, I haven't really done art in a long time. You kind of lose touch of who you are. You know, life happens. I used to love art, but I didn't pick up a paintbrush for, 10 years. And I thought, okay, I'll bring that back. And so I started doodling our sermons on Sunday morning because I figured it was a way for me to practice. It was, I knew it was going to happen again in another week or so. And, so for sure, every Sunday I would have another opportunity to try and doodle. And so I started posting them online, and people would look at them, and they would actually relearn the sermon again kind of through my doodles. And I found that years after I've created these, I could look back just at the image. I don't even have to read the notes anymore, and I could recall probably a good 80% of what that sermon was about. And I started doing research on these when images and text are used together, kind of similar to what the sign language does, is it's using two parts of your brain. You're using, the creative side and your analytical side both together. And so then it became intentional. Then I was like, I'm going to use this as a learning tool. And so I have Learner and Focus, and one of my ways that I use both of those together is every year I pick some random thing to learn about, and I spend a whole year learning it. So about 3 years ago, I started learning sketchnoting. I was like, I'm just going to spend a whole year and I'm going to learn about sketchnoting. And so I gathered as much research as I could, and I started really learning about this process. And I've been fascinated with it ever since. So I just started sketching, you know, as I started sketching the themes on Theme Thursday, I realized, wow, I'm really learning a lot about these themes.
Right.
And that's, I think, when Jim had mentioned, you know, maybe you should put this in a book. And I never really thought about that. And it was interesting timing on Jim's part that he didn't know, maybe until right now, is that it was coming to the end of my year when I was going to have to find something new to focus and learn about.
Oh.
And so, and when he mentioned a book, I had been asked many times to write a book on various things, and I was like, no, not really interested. But this kind of interested me, and when he posed it to me, I was like, perfect timing, because I need a new thing to focus on. So I'm going to learn how to be an author, and I'm going to spend a whole year focused on learning how to be an author, because, you know, why not? And so I spent that year learning about it, and he actually has some of my artwork up. I sell each piece of art as like a glossy, and so him and Kurt were actually the first people that I gave, you know, those glossies to, because they were both really inspirational to me in helping me develop kind of a gift that I didn't really know I had.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was just a really neat thing.
So tell me about the book. I want to give you a chance. I mean, people are going to their interest is piqued now. So tell the book, and I think I see a little bit of artwork right next to you there.
You do? That's my learner.
Pull it a little closer and tell us a little bit about it and how it fits into the book.
Well, you want to see that picture?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So this is actually a painting. So I actually took the art and I blew it up, you know, ginormous. Hold on, let me fix these earbuds. I kind of blew it up into a huge picture, but they blow up like really huge. My husband has a 30 by 30 in his office on responsibility that I created for him. But it's again, a reminder that this is part of who I am. And so the book is called Draw on Your Strengths. It looks like this. And it's now on iTunes. We just went live a couple days ago on iTunes. And inside it has all the illustrations for each of the 34 themes.
Oh, beautiful.
So each one of those themes is all sketched out. Like, I don't know, here's a ranger you can see. But inside of that picture, I have, you know, text that reminds me and teaches me about each one of those pieces. So the book is just a compilation of all 34.
Carol Ann, Richard says he's a very visual person, but he struggles to draw anything that resembles reality. How can I learn to draw? And now in the book, there's you know, to draw your own. But what kind of tips would you give to somebody? And by the way, that's not the only way to learn, right? It's the way you learn.
No, that's how I learn.
Would you give some tips if somebody wanted to start doing some of these things? Maybe just a few quick tips on how they get started.
Yeah, I actually started a website for kids called EduSketch, and I'm teaching students how to do this process. You know, part of it is just, you know, it doesn't have to be a picture. It could be just boxes that you're putting information in. For me, it's about color. I love a lot of color, so if I can put color in the background and make containers that hold little pieces of information, sometimes that's good enough. It doesn't have to be artsy. And in that website, you can see examples of kind of what things look like. Honestly, it's not about the art. It's about making a visual with your text. It's just some way that you can connect those two pieces of your brain. So it doesn't have to be art for the sake of art. It's really just about making a visual to help you remember.
Very good. Jim, do you have other questions that are coming our way?
Yeah, so Dion had asked, who does Carol Ann work with primarily? Is it mostly education, or where's your audience going now?
Probably split between churches and teachers. So educators and churches are probably my two biggest people that I work with, and then parents kind of fit in there at a really close third.
Okay, and then Matt asked this question that you touched on speaking to someone in their language, which is a wonderful others-oriented way of using strengths. How do you help your clients see and take action on speaking to others in their language? Certain exercises, discussions, stories. How do you teach that to other people, this idea of listening or watching for that language?
Well, you have to know what it is first. So I think it's really important that whoever that manager is knows what the strengths are of the people that she's working with. And not just, those words don't mean a whole lot if you don't know what the background is. So sometimes I go into businesses, like I worked with a hospital a couple months ago, and all the people have their top 5 written on their, on their desks or their offices as you walk by, which if you don't know what those words mean, it's kind of hard to relate to them. So you really have to spend some time learning who your people are, learning who they are, and it's fascinating. It's fascinating because what happens is when you really understand where somebody's coming from, it helps you get along a little bit better. So sometimes the angst that's happening in workplaces or school situations or close quarters, some of that goes away just by really understanding where that person is. How are they walking?
So true.
But you really do have to spend some time understanding where they're coming from. And that's really why I wrote the book, is not just for me to understand, but for someone to take those concepts and understand someone else. Because we think, well, doesn't everybody think that way? Well, no,
right.
they don't.
Right. So, I appreciate that perspective, that if we just spent some time understanding and appreciating where people were coming from, then we could help even have more productive application of those strengths. So how do you get people to do that? Like in that healthcare organization, are there questions you encourage them to ask of each other? Are there activities you give managers to do with their team? Talk a little bit about how you get people to that conversation that leads them to the understanding.
And again, I kind of hate to keep going back to that book, but in the book I put questions for people to ask, and or for people to go through. So, and I did it in my calendar too. So in my calendar I have specific questions that you should be asking yourself. If focus is your, in your top 5, what questions should I ask myself this month that can help me focus on my focus? Your focus needs more focus. You just how to dig a little deeper. And when a manager has those questions, they can help them to ask those questions of their people. Sometimes you don't even know what question to ask.
Exactly.
Sometimes the first step is just like, I don't even know what to ask them. You're an achiever. I don't even know what question to ask you. So I give them some questions, either to ask yourself if it's your number 1, or it might be a question to ask somebody else if it's their, top 5.
Very good.
So it's kind of a starting place for them, is what do I ask them? How do I start a conversation?
And the nature of that is, Carol Ann, that we can sit together in a room and we can have, an hour-long session to dig into our strengths and ask those questions of each other. Or I can be asking those people, I can just have that question in my mind or on a card.
Yes.
And each time I interact with an employee that day, it's my question of the day for them. So it doesn't have to be this scripted event. No. It can just be kind of a new framework for how we manage, how we treat each other as a team, or how we build that culture of a strengths focus.
I was working with a pastor that has woo number 34, and so he doesn't have a lot of questions to ask people because he does not like to be funny, that he doesn't like to be around a lot of people. So the calendar helped him because it shows his top 10, but it gives him questions to ask, like kind of like an opening question. With woo in my top 5, I don't have it doesn't take me a whole long time to start asking questions of somebody. But I can see that if it's down on the bottom, it's not that you don't want to start a conversation, you just might not know what is it that I should ask you.
Exactly.
And so anyways, it's kind of where that idea came from.
Caroline, we've been kind of highlighting the coaches in our community that have published books. So we had Sarah Robinson on last, Called the Coach. We have you on here. Ryan's coming up in February to talk about his book about Mondays. When you wrote the book, a lot of our coaches see this as a way to have influence, as a way to get their name out in the community, a way to have, everybody kind of wants to write a book. When you wrote this, what kind of maybe one or two lessons, if you were to give one of our coaches some advice, like, hey, I'm thinking about writing a book, what would you tell them? That maybe the one or two things to say, okay,
find a really good editor. So Dion Hamilton Smith in England, who I've actually never met in person, helped me edit my book. So I would send her the manuscript, and she would sit and go through. Kurt actually started. He was my original editor, and he would go through painstakingly all of my images and help me work through them. Really, my book was not to get my name out there, it was so I could learn about each one of these strengths. I'm just super excited that other people can take it and learn from it too. But find somebody that you can bounce ideas off of, and you need to be able to accept their ideas. Because sometimes you think you have a really great idea, and it might not be that great of an idea. You have to look at it through somebody else's eyes. And give yourself time. What I learned from becoming an author is it's a lot more work than I thought to just sit down, write a book, and get it out there. It's a lot of work. And so give yourself time. Give yourself time to write every day. Just set time aside. But really find an editor and find people around you that can look at it through different eyes. I really appreciated both Jim and Kurt, looking at some of these things, and I like my daughter as high maximizer, and when I wrote the original artwork for Maximizer, I had drawn, the picture of like the arrows going out to the, like to maximize your screen for your computer, and so the lines weren't perfectly straight. I just had drawn them out. Well, she's like, Mom, when you do the book, the lines have to be perfectly straight. This is for Maximizer, It was fine with me. It was fine with me, but she, I had to look at each one of those images through somebody else's eyes, and I'm so glad, because now I can look at them and be like, you helped me here, and you helped me here, and you helped me here, and when I look at the book, I look at a whole bunch of relationships that I have, and each one reminds me of a different person. And, when I did Developer, it was the last one that I was doing of Kurt's top 5. And when I was doing it, I was like, I don't know what to do for Developer. But Kurt was a photographer. So I took the idea of a dark room, and it was kind of a nod to him. A friend of mine had given me the idea of doing it as a dark room, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's perfect, because it's a great nod, and now I'm really glad that I did that. But each one has a whole story. There's little hidden gems in each page that that I know about, that maybe not everybody else knows
it's
about.
It's like Where's Waldo?
Kind of.
Those, right?
Exactly.
You're looking around.
I'll give you one. So in context, I have a picture. I have hieroglyphics in the picture for context, but the hieroglyphics really spell out Carol Ann.
Oh, cool.
So just like each one has like
so we'll have to get like the insider notes.
Yeah, each one
this is like going to be a challenge for our coaching world out there.
You'd have to look at it, but each one has like, whether it's a little image or something that's in there. Some of them came from great coaches. I have a funny story, so I just got to tell this one. So I was at the very, very end. I had ideation and consistency left. They were my last 2 I had to do for the book. And I like a lot of people around me giving me ideas, so I posted it on the coach's blog. I was like, hey guys, I have 2 more left to do. I have ideation and consistency is my number 34. So I saved it to the last because I just felt like I don't even know how to relate to this one. I've got nothing. I got nothing. Every time I went to draw it, I got nothing. So I was like, I posted online. I was like, I really would like some ideas. I'd like to do some brainstorming sessions. Well, in 15 minutes, I had 50 people in my ideation, like that. 50 people in my ideation brainstorming, shocker, right, group, and 3 people in my consistency group. And consistency people were awesome because they gave me these like really deeply thought out, answers. But my ideation group, they were like, it's like popcorn, it's like fireworks, it's like a fire hose that keeps going off. And they were just giving me all like crazy ideas. So as I was drawing, I was trying to draw literally every single thing that they were saying in this group. And one of the girls at the end, she's like, it's like mushrooms. I'm like, what? How is ideation anything like mushrooms? She's like, like at the end of the day, you cut all the mushrooms down out of your yard, and when you wake up in the morning, 100 more are there. And so in the very corner of my ideation, I have little mushrooms in the corner, but each one of these drawings has like a nod to coaches and a nod to people that, when I look at it, I look at all of these people that surrounded me that helped me come up with these ideas, and for me, it's just really emotional because it's just so wonderful to know all these people that I could never have done it without all of those people.
Oh, very fun. Very fun. Jim, any other questions before we have to kind of...
Yeah, just one more coming in. The UK had dropped out for a second, of course. Dion helped you with that, and she did hear you did give her a big drop for her bucket in that. I think she heard that. But the questions that you put in the calendar, where did you come up with those? Did you make those up? Did it come out of a resource? How'd you come across
all kinds of places. Resources, made up, talking with my friends, coach's blog, all that. So the calendar looks like this, and it has, it still has the main picture that I put in the book, but underneath it has just questions to ask yourself. And I intended it that to use your top 10, so you can kind of go through and use your, look at your top 10, because what happens is we forget who we are. We forget who we are. And I want people, it's really important for me that people know who they are. Be proud of that. Put it up in your office. Be reminded of it. Ask yourself some tough questions. Focus, spend a whole month focusing on achiever or focusing on an election, and do some things to really develop that, because your top 5 are good, but your top 10 is really a great place for you. And sometimes we focus on the top 5, and then you're like, oh, I forgot I had communication. But now I want to be reminded of that. And I actually gifted my family their top 34 for Christmas, because I want them to know. I just feel like you wouldn't have to find yourself if you knew where you were in the first place.
Well, and I love that idea. We have a coach colleague here that says each year she picks one of her top, her dominant talents to focus on for the whole year. That may seem a little daunting or overwhelming to some of our individuals out there, unless, like you, with that learner, and you say, this is going to be my learning focus for the year. Maybe that's easier for some folks depending on their themes. I love how the calendar gives them the chance to do it in a month-by-month kind of way. So really neat. Well, Carol Ann, you've been a wonderful guest. I still think there's so much more we could dig into, but time and the lovely producer do limit us on that. But I think about, you've inspired a lot of ideas for me. I'm thinking of, I'm wondering if gifts can still be fulfilled within the next week or so, or maybe they're great New Year's gifts. But just, how do we help people focus on their strengths? And I love that you bring to your coaching and to your passion about strengths some very tangible tools, some very unique strategies, to accompany the passion, but help make it very breathable, livable, touchable for people that they can.
It has to be, or people won't do it.
Exactly. Exactly. But it helps other people get more enthusiastic about their own strengths. I can't help but imagine that your husband and daughters are more passionate about their strengths because you're wearing the dog tags and you're noticing and sharing them. So thank you. I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
You know, and really excited to see what the next year and the next goal of Carol Ann McGuire's learning might look like, and what wonderful benefits the rest of us as a coaching community will receive.
Well, I have a new year coming, so if you have any ideas of things you need me to focus and learn on, let me know.
Exactly. I think that's Jim Collison's job, right?
That's my job.
Nugget of inspiration.
Don't rob me of my chance for influence.
I actually do all the things that Jim gives me ideas to do.
She's the best. Carol Ann, on the calendar, if I wanted to order those now, what's the turnaround on those? Because you custom build those, right?
They're totally custom built, and it takes about 10 days for the company to custom make them and send them out. But really, they're great birthday gifts. You know, you really want somebody to focus in, and I can start them at any month. It doesn't have to start in January. I can start the calendar in March.
Cool birthday gift.
Yeah,
or
so I want it to be
New Year's gift. At this
or New Year's. Yeah, it would totally be there by New Year's.
Probably would. I think I'm going to get one. I need one for Sarah for Christmas. I can't say it too loud. It won't make it there in time, but we'll have it. We'll have it on her.
It can be an IOU. Yeah.
Take a picture of it or something.
I think I have to have one for my office.
Yeah, this was my vision for this, is that in the strengths community, when I took over as strengths community manager, we didn't have enough recognition or enough strengths gifts, and certainly we can't do it all here at Gallup, and so I really started reaching out to the coaches and saying, hey, help us with this, make a business. And so, Caroline, you're doing this. Connie's working on T-shirts. We've got all kinds of opportunities going on. The ecosystem is gigantic, and I don't think there's a limit to what can be done out there.
Yeah.
And so,
no,
Caroline,
you said there's no gifts out there, and I'm like, oh.
Boom.
I could do gifts.
Boom, it's done. I've really loved what you've done. It's been great partnering with you on these, in this journey with it, and it's great. That picture is in my office and is my top 5, and it was great to have those top 5 for Kurt to have at his funeral. And so thanks for all the work that you do. We'll encourage others to soar with their strengths, whatever those might be, in that book. And if you have questions about how to do that, hopefully lots of material in this webcast today. And Caroline, thanks for coming on. Remind everyone to take remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strengths Center, just gallupstrengthscenter.com. Send us your questions to be a guest blogger on the coaches, and we have a brand new program going on right now where we want you to blog based on the themes that are coming up, the Gallup Weekly Strengths Wisdom series that starts January 11th. Head over to the coaches blog. Strengths each week, kind of like Shark Week. But every week of the year, if you're in America, you know what that is. Every week of the year, an opportunity to celebrate and learn one of the themes, and so great opportunities there. If you haven't yet, head out to the Coaches blog. The links to our Facebook group, YouTube page, iTunes and RSS feeds, iPhone and Android apps, as well as all the weekly Strengths Wisdom program information is over there. Again, coaching.gallup.com. If you found this helpful, please share it. We want to thank everyone for coming out today. I know, and it's a holiday season, so we'll say happy holidays, Merry Christmas to you, and with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.